Hello, everybody. How's everybody? How's everybody doing this evening? It's 9 o'clock in the East, 10 Central, and it could be 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock, wherever you are in the world. Thanks for coming on for Beyond BMR with Krista. I have a great show slated for you. Dennis Carroll joins us from Hunting in the Shadows podcast. Please subscribe to Dennis on YouTube if not already. I'll have the links provided for Dennis later on in the show. If this is your first time here, please subscribe to Bigfoot Michigan Rob on YouTube, the Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast on YouTube, Texas Front Porch, all found on YouTube. Again, if this is your first time here, you can find us on Spreaker, iHeart, wherever podcasts are found. So go check that out. Don't forget the super chat's open, a great way to help support what we all do around here. And also, you can become a BMR pirate. Join today. Join the many. Join the few. Depends on your point of view, right? You get a picture of me in the chat room by your name, sporting a bandana. So, thanks for that in advance. I also want to thank everybody who's bought my books that are out there. Bigfoot Michigan Rob presents True Cryptid Encounters, Book 1 and Book 2. It's on Amazon. Type Bigfoot Michigan Rob in your Amazon browser. Please, everybody, leave a review. It does help promote sales. Of course, subscribe, and you can find us also on Spreaker as well as all the other podcasts. So thanks in advance for that. The link for Book 2 is also pinned atop in the chat room. Joining me, as always, from Studio B, from the Blondes and the Booze, the lovely Krista. I'm going to pull her up.
Hey.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going. It's Tuesday.
It's Tuesday. I always love the Tuesday night shows, and every Tuesday for the rest of the month, we've got a great lineup of guests, starting today with, of course, Dr. Dennis Carroll.
Yep.
And I love having Dennis on, Krista, because you talk about a wealth of knowledge in all of these fields.
I agree. Wholeheartedly agree with you.
You know, I mean, he's my go-to when I have a question or I got a problem to figure out in this paranormal world. Dennis, it doesn't matter if it's cryptids, the paranormal, or ghosts, demons, and demonology. And that's just the iceberg, what Dennis provides.
Absolutely. Yep.
And Dennis also has got many books. Go check out the Dennis Carroll, his books. I believe most of those you can find on Amazon. Again, he's been on this show several times. He's a favorite for the audience. Certainly, he's become a good friend of mine over the last couple of years. And again, he's always the go-to. And being that it's Shocktober, we're going to start out with the traditional things about Halloween, because Dennis's favorite subjects happen to be werewolves and vampires. We're going to get into that a little bit tonight, and also some other bizarre things. So we're going to mix it up a little bit, as we always do with Dennis, because when Dennis comes on, you never know what rabbit hole we go down.
That's right. I like the idea of the werewolves and vampires.
I love it. That's growing up, werewolves and vampires. My dad brought me up on the old black and whites, and I was hooked. This time of year, my biggest YouTube search in October is werewolves and vampires. Right. So, enough of that. I'm going to bring up Dr. Dennis.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hello.
Rob, good to see you again.
Good to see you again. Yep, absolutely.
As I mentioned, you've been on this. Go ahead, Dennis.
I was just thinking about that good introduction you gave me there. I used to do a lot of talks at schools. I do a lot of presentations at schools with kids about ghost stories and stuff like that. And there was one thing I always opened with that I would tell them. And I would say, when the boogeyman looks under his bed, he's looking for me. Okay. So that's why I would always start out.
Well, I imagine the boogeyman does look for you, because I'm sure that you've, throughout many of the things you've done in your life, I'm sure you've gotten rid of a few boogeyman men for people in your earlier years, helping people out with these problems that they've had. Would that be a true statement?
Yeah, I've done a lot of consultations. It's been part of my job, not just actual physical investigation or what we call field research, which I've done a lot of that. But also have done a lot of consultation over the years. People come to me with their paranormal problems from all over the world. I've had cases everywhere from India to China to Romania. The list goes on and
Wow.
on. There are people who contacted me about certain problems that they had, not just demonic problems, but other things as well, like ghost hauntings and stuff like that. I'm pretty well been a lot deep into a lot of consultation on a lot of that stuff.
Mhm.
A lot of times these people also come to me with just questions, some things they want to try to understand, and I try to help them find the answers for stuff like that.
Awesome.
Yeah, what I like most about you too is when I ask you about certain things in the paranormal world or cryptid world, whatever it is, you always present it to me in a manner that I understand it. I've spoken to a few other people that are knowledgeable, and sometimes these people get so deep. I'm like, okay, can you speak to me at the fifth grade level? And Dennis, you have a great way to communicate what you're talking about, where we all can understand. And I think that's a great gift that you have because I always get the first
Mhm.
time you tell me something. So hats off to you on that.
Well, I could always get into the terminology and use the big words if I wanted to, but I like to keep things simple. The more simple it is, the better it is to understand and to communicate what you want to do. You keep it on a simple basis. I've had a lot of people over the years complain about that. So, oh, you're just, that's too simple of an answer. But hey, the answer sometimes is very simple if you look at it the right way. You can go. I always look at it like this: you can either take a long straight road and get there in a hurry, or if you want to, you can go on a long winding road and take the scenic route. But it's just how you approach it that's what really important about it, whatever the situation is.
Yeah, I agree, and I think too a lot of people, and I don't know many people like this, but we all peruse YouTube or we all look things up on the internet or watch movies or watch documentaries. And I find a lot of these, especially the people that are really geared scientifically, I think a lot of these guys just want to show off their PhD. And I know you have several PhDs, but I think sometimes they just want to show people, hey, I'm smarter than you type of thing. And those
Mhm.
type of people automatically just turn me off. Hey, keep it simple, smart, and stupid. What's that? The three S's: simple, smart,
That's
and
very true.
stupid. Pretend your audience has no clue what you're talking about.
Mhm.
So you do a great job with that.
But I told him, man, I've mentored a lot of groups over the years, a lot of people that have been in this, different types of investigation, all that. One thing I used to tell them: hang your ego outside the door. Don't bring that in here because the ego will mess you up. And that's what you're talking about. A lot of these people are on ego trips. All they want to do is show you pictures of themselves all the time and what they're supposedly doing. And it's all about them. It's an ego trip, you know?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody has a small ego, but you'll find that we don't provide that here. We're here to
Mhm.
provide good quality content, information, whether you believe it's your choice, right? For all these topics, because let's be honest, all these topics that we talk about, whether it's Dogman, Bigfoot, the paranormal, unless you're tuned into this, a lot of people think it's a bunch of malarkey, right? And but the way I look at it is this: I know these things exist with my experiences, and like they say, I don't believe I know these things exist, much like Krista and yourself. So
Mhm.
Well, I've said that before, Rob, a lot of times, Rob, Krista, that, seeing is truly believing. You can talk about something all day long, and yes, you can believe it in sort of a more scholarly way, a more apparent way in your mind, you can believe it. But when you see it, it actually truly brings it home to you.
Yeah.
That's like when I first had an incident with Bigfoot. I've had UFO. I've had ghost incidents, vampires, werewolves, the whole thing. When you see something like that, it brings it home for you. You know without a doubt then it exists, but it also
Mhm.
leaves you with one question that will haunt you. And that is, if this is real, what else is out there?
Right.
That's what kind of opened the doors for me. We're to get into some werewolf talk, vampire talk. And when I was a kid, that's what I was brought up on with my dad. Lon Chaney, the werewolf, Bela Lugosi,
Mhm.
the vampire, Boris Karloff, Frankenstein. So, man, I watched those old black and whites, which to this day, especially in October, I'll watch a lot of. And I always was a believer of all these monsters and paranormal things throughout my life. And for me, it really was enhanced with the experiences that I've had, which just makes the mystery that much greater for me to want to. Hey, listen, we'll never solve it, but to learn more about it, and knowledge is power in these subjects. And
Mhm.
so yeah, so again, I always appreciate when you come on. And in the spirit of Halloween, I think we'll start the show with one of your favorite topics. It's with werewolves. Now, we've heard of werewolves from folklore. We've also heard of some people think that a werewolf and a dogman is the same. I don't think they are. But it all starts for me with the werewolf folklore. And I guess before we start, I think with folklore, Dennis, there's a lot of truth behind folklore to an extent, right? Because these
Mhm.
stories started back in the 1600s, 1500s, 1800s, and they start from somebody seeing something. And throughout the years, maybe they got enhanced and embellished a little bit. I get that. But would you agree with when you talk werewolves, they came from somewhere, and I think to this day they do walk the earth.
Mhm.
Oh, absolutely. I know without a doubt that they exist because when I got deep into demonology, it opened a lot of doors to the paranormal for me. I began to understand a lot of things that I did not know before. And like you, I was a monster kid. I grew up on the old monster movies. We used to watch Shock Theater and all that on Saturday afternoons, you know. You always had the Universal was my favorite, of course. And I grew up to find out though the very interesting thing is that monsters truly are real.
Mhm.
Sometimes they're us. Okay, that's the way that goes. I found that out when I was in law enforcement. Sometimes we're the monsters, but we are the monsters in a way. Look at the Frankenstein monster. Look at Wolfman and all that. They are still human beings to a certain extent. They are still us. You know, the facsimiles of us. But when I got deep into the study of demonology, I began to find out some interesting things that a lot of these things are connected through black or dark witchcraft and
Mhm.
supernatural powers that people obtain. And there is a strong connection between werewolves and vampires in this respect. They are deeply rooted in black magic and dark evil witchcraft.
Mhm.
Um, that is their origin, their true origin of the things.
Uh,
So, so with werewolves back in we all saw like the Wolfman with Lon Chaney, and of course in the beginning you talk about the gypsies were brought up in this, and how a werewolf bit Lon Chaney in the movie, and a curse or a hex was placed on him. So do you think the legend now werewolves probably are shapeshifters? So do you think that's how it all started with that dark magic or a hex from from witchery, or as you said, dark magic, black
Oh,
magic?
yeah. Well, that is the power of the werewolf, is that
mhm.
dark supernatural power that it gets. And the interesting thing, you know, we think about the movies we've seen all our lives, but they really give us some misinformation. Because when you go to folklore, and you remember my very favorite quote from Herbert Spencer about folklore, that every myth and legend known to mankind is not without its authentic foundation. So that's where you go with folklore. It begins to tell you some true stuff. It's been written off as being old wives' tales and stuff that's made up, but that's not true. Folklore has a lot of truth to it.
Yep.
And we have to pay a lot of attention to it. It will teach us things that are lost and forgotten a lot of times. But when you look at these things, Rob, Krista, you got to put Hollywood aside. Hollywood has misinformed us on a lot of stuff. Okay, I've even talked with kids who were disappointed that they couldn't jump up 20 feet in the air and do karate kicks like they see on movies, because people can't really do that in real life.
Mhm.
But that's the way Hollywood has indoctrinated us in
Right.
many aspects. So we have to put that aside. And you look at the real werewolf, okay? He can be anybody. He can be your next door neighbor. He can be the bag boy at your grocery store. He can be anybody. He could be somebody you think you know very well. The werewolf can be anyone. He is us, okay? Taking one step further into the darkness than what we are. And when he puts on that belt or pelt that has that black magic power in it, he becomes something else other than human. He becomes a supernatural creature with supernatural strength and abilities. And I've had a lot of people talk to me about this. The big difference between Dogman, supposedly, and the werewolf. And I think they get mixed up a lot. I think there's some misidentification going on there a lot of times. But let me say this about that right quick. Dogman might cut you a break and let you go. The werewolf is a psychotic apex killer.
Yeah.
It's not going to turn you loose. It's not going to let you go. It's going to tear you to pieces.
Wow.
And then probably eat you. That's just the way it works. But that's the werewolf. But it can be. Here's the interesting thing, Rob, Krista. He could turn into a werewolf in the middle of the day. It can be. It doesn't matter what the full moon or if it's a new moon. It doesn't matter if there's a moon at all. It's not what it's tied to. It's tied to the magic, the dark magic, and that belt or pelt or whatever name you want to call it that he puts on to transform himself into the werewolf. And the one bad thing that, all black magic has a price, okay? Listen to this. I don't know if I ever told you this. But the more this guy transforms into the werewolf, man or woman, whoever it may be, the more and more he does that, he loses his humanity. Eventually, he can't change back to human anymore. He becomes a wolf completely. Maybe that's where Dogman comes from.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask you with the Dogman. I mean, here's my take. I think werewolf is like you explained. I think that is a shape-shifting person that's been cursed or was dealt some dark magic or black magic. When you talk about Dogman, you come across these accounts of a flesh and blood creature, which I think we've all heard. Butch Witkowski, he's passed on, and he had a couple different theories behind Dogman. One being the 6 foot tall dog-like being, actually a flesh and blood with the hocked legs, has the head of a German Shepherd, which is like more of a natural being. But then you come across these people in the stories I've gotten, Dennis, the ones you've heard and gotten throughout the years. Also, when the Dogman appears, you get that feeling of dread, almost all the time. I've heard incidences where people see the Dogman out in the woods, looks at him, stares him down, and it sends off this almost like a communication, like, I can get you if I want. And they always give that scowl, that they kind of like smile at these people and disappear.
Right.
And I know werewolves and dogmen are different, but they're similar in a lot of these instances as well. What do you think about that?
Well, here's the one thing that really concerns me, Rob.
Okay.
And like having read, even though it's on a book you hadn't put out just recently, some of these stories of Dogman, they kind of put up a red flag for me, some of them.
Okay.
I'm not saying all of them. I'm not going to paint all this with a broad brush, okay? Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying all of them, but there are some that concern me deeply because they definitely have some type of demonic activity going on in them or associated with them in some way. There is a demonological side to Dogman that we don't talk too much about. but it's there, and it's very apparent if you look into a lot of these reports, like the book you wrote and all that, that you got these things in. These things are appearing very magically sometimes. They're coming out of nowhere. They're dealing with people. They're talking to people. They're telecommunicating with their minds. They're doing very demonic stuff. You got to ask yourself a question: why? Why is that?
Wow. Good question. I've heard people talk about, like, you know, a difference between a dogman and a werewolf is dogman has a tail, a werewolf does not. Do you believe that to be true, or?
Well, the true werewolf, like I said, there's Hollywood again. Okay, the true werewolf, and I'm talking about, there are different types of werewolves, by the way. You've got the kind of cursed werewolf. You've got the wolf man, which is a half man, half wolf thing that doesn't even look that much like what you think a true werewolf is. A real 100% werewolf, it's got a tail, runs on 4 legs. It looks like something like a big monster dire wolf type thing. Okay. If you go back to the Beast of Walden that they talk about, and some of the werewolves in Germany, these things were like big, giant, horrible, monster looking wolves. But nevertheless, they had tails. They ran on 4. They could stand up on 2 legs when they wanted to and walk around like you and I do. But most of the time they did 4 legs because, by the way, you can run faster that way. Okay. You can move faster on 4 legs than you can on 2. But that's the werewolf. Okay. That's the true actual image of a real werewolf. Okay. Now there are different, like I said, different varieties. A cursed werewolf can be like the Wolfman, like the Lon Chaney movie. He had a curse on him. Okay. That's what the curse is. So it is a blend of man and wolf going on there. Okay.
So
that's
really
where
quickly,
you change it. Supposedly under this curse, if you bite someone else like that, you can pass that curse on like a virus. You can pass that curse on, or it can be passed down through your bloodline.
Wow.
So let me ask you, can we, this is not confusing, but just to set the record straight, if you will, werewolf, wolfman, to you are different. One is more of a shapeshifter, and one is revolves around dark magic, or both are the same? Because it sounds like they're the same yet different.
Right.
You follow my question? Well, the different attributes, and like I said, the werewolf is a maniacal beast. It will, like I say, when it gets on your trail, will not stop till it finds you and kills you and devours you. That Little Red Riding Hood, we never hear the real part. In the real Little Red Riding Hood story, the wolf won. Okay, he ate her. That was it. And Walt Disney came along and said, "Oh, we can't do that. We can't tell the kids that. We gotta bring a woodsman in here and kill the wolf and get him out." But the real story ended. It was a werewolf story, okay, and it ended with her being devoured. That's what werewolves do to you. They will not only kill you, they will eat you. They're very psychotic killers, but they are driven by dark black magic, demonic power. That's what it is. It inhabits you, but they still have one thing even worse than that going with them. They still have the mind of a man or a woman, as the case may be.
Okay.
Do they still know
the Dogman may be different in that attribute. He may not have that kind of intelligence like that. You know what I'm saying? Like a man, because that's what makes the werewolf so very dangerous. It not only has all this deep, dark, demonic power, strength, and ability to rend you to pieces, but it's got the mind of a man behind it.
Do they know the difference between right and wrong? Like a man?
Oh yeah, definitely. They know what they're doing, but they're so full of demonic power that they can't stop it. You know, it's like when you go too far, Krista, when you step over too far into the darkness, it invades you completely, and it changes your whole attribute and outlook on everything. You are not the same person. and
Right.
stepped into that darkness once you're in there. And I think when they give themselves over to this demonic power, and I've actually seen voodoo ceremonies where they do these things. I've seen this live right in front of my eyes. I have attended a black mass one time. I see what people do with their rituals that bring forth this power that they use and what it can do to them because they let these spirits inhabit them.
Gotcha. That's scary stuff, man. just saying.
Well, this is why we have Dennis on, because you really, yeah, now I see the difference. I know what you're talking about, werewolf, wolfman. And let me ask you this. You and I, we did a show together a couple of weeks ago. We talked about cemeteries and Dogman. And we were talking about why is it that a lot of these accounts, dogmen are hanging out at cemeteries. And it's kind of perplexing. To me, it reminds me of a ghoul. You know, they're running through, ravaging through these plots. And what's your take on that? Do you think what's the correlation?
What I said earlier about the demonic connection with Dogman, that's one of them. Because the demonic is drawn to places of the dead, trauma, graveyards, morgues, battlefields, hospitals, places like that. They are drawn like magnets to that. I've had a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm going to the graveyard and I'm going to call up some ghosts." I said, "Well, good luck at that. There's probably not very many ghosts truly hanging around graveyards. They're more like demon spirits are."
Okay.
Definitely. That's what you're going to run into most of the time when you go to graveyards. I think Krista knows that. You have that, possibility, definitely. And I have to wonder, Rob and Krista, a lot of times about some of these dogmen, if they're not the product of conjuration, something has called them forth from the darkness, do something that has a certain mission or something. And by the way, graveyard dirt and a lot of that stuff is used in a lot of black magic ceremonies and stuff. And if you could send something like that under your control out to get you what you wanted, maybe bones that you need from a grave or whatever the situation is, I won't go into that, but they use this stuff. They would definitely send something out like, instead of your dog fetching your slippers and your paper for you, they would send this out to get what they wanted.
Wow.
I don't think I'd want a dog man fetching my slippers or my paper.
No. No.
He's the one pet that I would like that this ran away, really, if I had. It's not even a pet, right?
You wouldn't put a lost and found ad out.
No, have you seen this? You get a snapshot. Have you seen my dog? And it's like this demonic looking, crazed looking dog.
Right.
No, thank you. No, thank you.
Let me tell you this, a lot of times, dark, I call them dark, black witches, whatever the situation is, warlocks, whatever they're bad actors. They call forth demonic entities that are guardians for a lot of things that they do, either to guard them or their locations or whatever it is. And I actually ran into one time that tried to kill me.
Wow.
On a set of stairs in the building. I had claw marks on my back from this. This thing tried to kill me. I mean, I had to physically fight this thing. And that's hard to do when you can't see what you're fighting. But I had to physically fight this spirit to keep it from trying to kill me by throwing me down this flight of stairs. And the next day, I had claw marks on me. I could feel its claws in me. It was not human at all. But I found out later that it was a guardian called up by dark witchcraft.
Wow. So what happened where were you? Can you talk a little more in depth on that?
Well, I was doing an investigation with a team in a building. And part of the building had been leased out to a black witch who had a shop in it. And they had threw him out of the shop. Okay. So I think he kind of put a curse on it. I told one of the guys that was with me, I said, go around to that shop. I don't know why I said that. Sometimes you just go with your intuition, But I told this guy, I said, go around to the shop, to the wall, the wall where the shop was, and come back and tell me what you find. And the guy come back in a few minutes. He said, how did you know there was something there? I said, I didn't know. What was it? He said, there's a pentagram painted on the side of this wall, an upside down pentagram.
Wow.
And that's when I knew immediately that a spell had been cast there.
Wow.
And that's what we were dealing with. Other people saw this entity as well. It was like a black shadow with two red eyes looking out of it. Several of us saw it that night. But that night when I went upstairs in that building, and it was like a long flight of stairs, and then there was like a landing, and then another flight of stairs up. Well, luckily, it attacked me on the landing. If it got me on the stairs, I might not be here right now. Yeah.
Wow.
But it got me on the landing. That's where it attacked me. I was alone in the dark. I had a lot of ambient light from street lights and all that. I mean, I could see. But to have something that you can't see attack you is devilishly hard to fight back again.
Yep. I've been attacked too. I've been choked a couple times by spirit, and it's very scary because you just feel it. You don't see it.
Yep. Especially if you could be expecting it to happen, you could be, on guard, but it always gets you when your guard's down. That's the way it goes.
You mentioned if people are expecting it to happen, do you think that a lot of times we manifest a lot of these things, which actually comes upon because of our deep thought into a subject? I know that certain things, I can manifest certain things, and no, I'm not talking paranormal or Dogman or Bigfoot, but there's certain things that I've been able to do throughout my life that, like, for example, if I set a goal to buy a boat, put it on my refrigerator, look at it every day, I'm going to buy this, or a house or a car or whatever. And then all of a sudden, 5 years later, 10 years later, whenever, I get it. Is that because the result of A, hard work, or B, I just manifested it, or probably a combination of both?
Well, we within ourselves, I don't think as human beings have actual power, unless we are very extraordinary human beings, put it that way, that can manifest things into creation that way. But I think our thoughts and our intentions, our sensitivities can foster these things. It can empower them more against us. We have to be very careful. That's like curses that are put on people. If I were to curse you tonight, Krista, put a curse on you, I would let you know that I did it. That's part of the curse, because then it begins working in your mind. And in your mind, you give it more power than it really has.
Right.
Okay. That's the way these things work. And I think we have to be very careful when we're dealing with darkness. We don't want to empower it, but as for us actually manifesting that darkness, unless you have some kind of demonic power in you, that's not going to happen that way. You know what I'm saying? You've got to have a power source. It's just like you got an electric shaver. It ain't going to work unless you plug it in. Of course, you got to have batteries too. But if it works off power, you got to have a power source. And that's what witchcraft is all about. That's why these people have familiars. That's why these people seek that shape-shifting ability. They can't do it on their own. They got to have a power source. That's just the way that works. Believe me, if these people could do things, truly do the things that some people think can be done with the mind, they would do it. But they can't, because they're limited by their humanity. But if they bring in an outside force with more power to it, they get things done.
Wow.
We associate all the time, as you actually mentioned throughout this show, about shape-shifting with the werewolf Dogman. Me and Krista were mulling something over, which I find fascinating. We're kind of we're looking this up a little bit. Okay, taking away the black magic just for a moment, or maybe we don't take it away. I guess it does. I guess it's immaterial, but a human being shape shifting into a werewolf. Okay, I get it. We've talked, we've spoken on it. But let me ask you this. When I think about a human shape shifting into, let's say, a werewolf, I think it's possible. And I think that once you shift it into werewolf, I don't know that you're going to come back. And again, it's different. There's a different variety and subject material with these beings. But you ever thought about, do you think it's possible, though, for a werewolf to shapeshift into a human?
I know how to do it. I know how to do it. And I know what it takes to do it. Okay. I mean, I could do it tonight. Okay. But I don't want to go that once you
Yeah, I
call
don't.
forth the darkness,
Yeah.
you pay a price and you can't get it back usually. Okay. I know these things. And I had a lot of people come up to me, Rob. I'm serious. They say, "Oh, can you tell me how to do this? You tell that?" I said, "Yeah, I can, but I'm not going to because you might try it."
Right.
That's the problem. Yeah, you're dealing with something way out of humans' leagues. In other words,
Yeah.
you're dealing with stuff that can lead you down some very dark, deadly
Yep.
roads. You don't want to go there because the price is not only your soul, but your humanity as well. That's the bad thing about it. This is like a cancer; it eats you up eventually till there's nothing left of you. That's not a good way to go in my book. Okay,
No.
I'd rather die quietly in nice hospital beds, or I would not want to go this way. Okay, believe me. But yeah, it is possible to call upon these forces to get things done. It is possible to have that ability to shape. That is the premier talent that a lot of these people are looking for. They want three things basically: shape shifting, immortality, and power. That's the three things they're looking for. And like we said about like the vampire, and we'll talk about them in a minute, but the vampire has that ability to look at you, Rob, Krista. Its powers in its eyes, by the way. Never look these things in the eyes. I don't care what it is, just Dogman, if it's Bigfoot, whatever it is, do not look these things in the eye. That's not a good idea to do. Okay. Don't make eye contact. Anyway, the power of the vampire in his eyes, he can twist your reality and get you to see what he wants you to see, not what's really there. That's the glamour that they use, the magic they use on you. There's a lot of imagery going on here in that too.
Yeah.
This we can move into the vampires in a little bit. It's just always there's so much things to discuss here, but this is a tad off topic, and I want to ask you this though. The reason I'm asking about like shape shifting and you mentioned a lot of packs, contacting the dark magic, something we don't want to do because we're going to give up our humanity or we'll be forever owned by an evil entity. I was always fascinated, Dennis, on the story of Robert Johnson, the blues guitar player, who was a young guy in his early 20s, young guy. He'd always sit outside of a tavern, and he was the worst guitar player in the history of mankind. This guy was absolutely terrible, yet he kept coming out and playing, and people throw a quarter in his bucket or whatever, trying to make some money. And he kept telling this man, Robert Johnson, continue on. You'll eventually get there. You'll eventually get better. One of the songs that evolved from this was called Crossroads. And then he talked to this person one night that came up to him and told him about, you've got to go to the crossroads, but you're going to pay a price. You can actually sell your soul to the devil and he'll give you whatever you want. And I guess as the story goes on, Robert Johnson went to the crossroads and he had an intervention with, I guess, the devil or something not of this world. And I guess was asked, what's your wish for? What do you want out of this visit? Why you paying me a visit? Why you summons me? He told him. And then, not even a week later, the guy goes back to this tavern or whatever, and he was strumming his guitar, and he played it out of this world. He was like, legend says he was probably the best blues guitar player for his short-lived era of less than a year, and he blew people away with this overnight talent he found, only to die in less than a year after getting this talent. Have you heard that story? And I think everything we're talking about kind of encompasses that, right? You don't want to play with this.
Yeah, there's an old saying, he's always waiting at the crossroads to make a deal.
Yep.
I think a lot of people have signed these dark contracts and made a lot of these deals to get some of the things they want. I think you see this happen every day. You see people come out of nowhere. Most of them, they don't have any talent and all that, and all of a sudden they're hot stuff. You know, you have to wonder why. A lot of times, what's truly behind these talents, so-called talents. I think a lot of people have signed contracts for this thing, and I think without a doubt there will always be a price to pay for it. That's just the way black magic works. When you put out the negative, you got to remember this. When you put out something negative, you're always going to get negative back. You don't usually get positive back from that. Okay, that's just the way that works. Law of the universe. If you put out positive, you usually get positive back. That's good, you know. And whenever you do something negative, like go deep into dark magic and all this stuff, you sell your very soul out for the things you want. You're doing it usually for all the wrong reasons. Just to get way off or whatever the situation. Like we talked about earlier, it's all about the ego. You want this, you think that you should have this. Whatever the situation is, you are selling yourself out. You're losing your humanity for that price, and it will be a price, and it will be a shorter life for you as well.
I don't want to get too far off topic, but Kimber kind of read my mind a little bit in chat room. I wanted to follow up and ask you then. Okay, back like you mentioned, back Universal Studios, when we talk about the 1940s movies, 1930s black and white monster movies, which we talked about at the beginning of the show, awesome greatness, right? Hollywood had a great era. Hollywood, which now is Hollyweird, and I tell you what, Hollywood is something that I don't want to mess with today. Unfortunately, I think there's aspects of Hollywood that's despicable. Do you think that a lot of these talents out there today, many of these talents, not to get into the artist or the actor or whatever, do you think a lot of them have contracts with this overnight stardom a lot of these people have? And you can even see some of these concerts where it's this weird chanting going on. Do you think a lot of people in Hollywood today, maybe over the last decade, have sold their soul to get the stardom that they have today?
Absolutely. I think a lot of that's going on. More than I think we'd be very surprised. Well, maybe some of us might not be. Knowing what I know, I would be surprised. But I think a lot of it's going on. Absolutely. I think a lot of people are kissing the devil. By the way, you don't want to know what the real devil's kiss is, okay? I can't talk about it here. But anyway, they've kissed the devil. They've signed the deals and got what they wanted. I think I think it's going on a lot in sports as well. And I'm not just going to hit Hollywood. I think you've got some sports figures who've done that as well. Just like Johnson, at the crossroads, they make a deal.
I guess we could even take this even further and talk about all these fantastic surgeons. Any field really, I guess, Dennis, depending on what your choice is and what your background is, right?
Yeah. Well, and here's the thing too, is like these people, Like they're in for the moment here and now. They don't think about the long term. Me personally, I'm a Christian. I'd never sell my soul to the devil for
Oh,
anything, because that's long term. That's forever. That's eternity, compared to these very short years here. No way.
yes, for sure,
Let me
Krista.
say this: I've had a lot of people. I've had a lot of people ask me, "Can you?" I've had people come up to me. I had a young girl one time come up to me and say, I sold my soul. I sold my soul to my daddy did it actually. My father sold my soul to the devil when I was little because he was into it. He was a warlock,
I
and
wouldn't
she
even
said, "I'm
joke and
doomed."
say that.
I said, "Wait a minute, you didn't." I said, "Your soul is your own. Okay, a soul is not a commodity that you can put on market and
Right.
sell it pound by pound. Okay, your soul is your own, but when they actually mean selling your soul, what they're saying is you're going over the fence into the wrong side, completely over. You're completely surrendering to that darkness. That's what you're doing. You're selling not only your soul, you're selling your whole self into it. Okay, and there's going to be a price that you will pay. That's just the way it goes with
Right.
darkness. But like I said, the further into that darkness you get, the more lost you are, the less hope there is that you will ever come back from it. It eats you up alive in that respect.
Mhm.
Just like very much like Darth Vader in Star Wars. He went to the dark side, okay, as they say. And it changed him. Look what it did to him and the
Right.
price he paid for it. That's a good example. Yeah.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Wow.
I will tell you, this is something I'll never even kid about or joke about when it comes to the dark side. And I mean, of course, we're kind of talking about the devil. Yeah, and it's just something that totally that's a no no. I mean, don't even I don't even like. Thanks, Anella, for that awesome super chat. Chat, of course, a great way to support what we do around here. Thank you, Anella. And with that being said, you can also become a BMR pirate. Join today. Join the many. Also, if a really quick tidbit, if you become a pirate member and a Blondes and Booze member and a Texas Front Porch member, you get to become a paranormal porch pirate. That's right. Thanks, Anella, for that awesome super chat. I appreciate it. Love you. So, Dennis, another thing that I like to talk about today, and again, we could go werewolves all night long. I mean, you could do a 15-hour podcast with you, to be honest. But we got time constraints and a couple things. We talked about now we talk werewolves. Yeah, folklore.
Mhm.
They started with that, and I think they exist. Dogmen exist. These things exist
Yep.
in one fashion. And maybe something though that might be a little less believable, although we'll talk about this a little later about your encounter with a vampire. But with the vampires, Dennis, if I believe in the werewolf, should I
Mhm.
believe in the vampire with the folklore? Do you think that? And I'm talking about the undead. I'm talking about the ones that literally. I'm talking about the bloodsuckers, frankly. What's your and I'm not.
Well,
What's your analysis? What's your thought on that?
they're very much like the werewolf. They're very much like the werewolf. They're different types of vampires, by the way. There are several different ones. Some of them are alive, living human beings, and some of them are not. Um, Going back to the dark witchcraft I mentioned earlier, if you go up the ladder of power in witchcraft, dark witchcraft, you are given certain talents step by step, and you have to do horrible, dark things on every level, okay, to obtain those different levels. But if you obtain a certain level, I'm not going to go into the technicalities of it, but if you attain a certain level, you get the shape shifting ability. You can change into a werewolf, you can change into a tiger, you can change into a pig or a dog or a cat or a vampire. You
Mhm.
can change into whatever you want to change, mostly.
Wow.
Okay, that's the way shapeshifting works. A lot of vampires begin as human beings who changed into that. That's one aspect of being a vampire. If you are a very dark warlock or witch, you can become a vampire. But here's the bad thing about it. Once you become the vampire, not like the werewolf now. Werewolf changes back, okay? Once you become a vampire, you become a vampire 100%.
Right.
You can't go back. You can't go back to being human again, okay? You will. Now, like the vampire I met in the graveyard, I think they can walk around in daytime when they want to, but their powers are very limited by daylight, and they can't go out in very strong sunlight, I don't think. But like on a nice cloudy day or a shady area, sure, they can hang out. They can be day walkers, okay?
Right.
Absolutely, if they want to. That's like I said, we got to forget Hollywood, because Hollywood has warped our sense of this, okay? There's a whole different breed of this thing. But what these people basically are, and this is what goes back to the root of all this, they are demonically possessed by vampire spirits, okay? I have run into a lot of vampire spirits and a lot of demon situations. They are real. They will suck the life out of you. They will destroy you. They will feed off of the life essence of your soul until you are nothing left but a husk. That's just the way they work. These things are very dangerous in that respect. But then you have the other kind of classical vampire, which is a walking corpse, reanimated by a demonic spirit in it.
Okay.
You can't kill it because it's already dead. Okay. Then you've got human vampires. You've got human vampires who are very much like maybe some of the goth people. That they got these vampire societies. They sit around, drink each other's blood, or whatever the situation that's going on. But some of these people are true vampires because they are inhabited by demonic vampire spirits.
Right.
It all keeps coming back to the demonic.
Wow. Wow.
So, in essence, then, you know, like Christopher Lee, another one of my favorite vampire actors, or favorite actors, I should say, most known for is Dracula. So, really, then, if you're looking back into that time, into that subject of the vampire, reanimated, probably possessed by the devil. These vampires that are reanimated corpses, are they doing the work of Satan himself?
Absolutely. You know what a necromancer is?
Yes.
A necromancer is one of the darkest of the dark wizards or warlocks, whatever name you want to give them. Sorcerers.
Hey, Dennis. Dennis, really quick. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Could you give a brief definition of necromancer for those that maybe don't know what that is?
Okay. Well, necromancer is actually a sorcerer who deals with the dead. That's where the name necromancer means. It means dead, diviner. And what they do, they can talk to the dead, or they can reanimate the dead. They can bring the dead back to life, so to speak. But they're not really alive. They're more like zombies kind of a thing, okay? That's what necromancers do. They're into all types of very, very dark. There's dark magic, and then there's dark magic. And that's the necromancer. Yeah, they get into some very bad and evil stuff. But very much like them, they also cooperate with the demonic, and to get the power they need to do things, they can create vampires as well. There's a thing we call demonic reanimation of the dead. This really happens. Okay, I'm not making this up. Demonic reanimation of the dead. Like say if you're dead, Rob, you're dead and gone, your spirit's gone, your body can still be used and abused by the necromancer.
Okay.
And here's the interesting thing. Now listen to this. Sometimes if you were in league with the necromancer, or you were helping him out or whatever, He can even call your spirit forth from beyond the veil to do what he wants you to do. So
Wow.
even death won't give you release from it.
Wow.
Is it true too that can I would imagine that a necromancer could probably read the thoughts of the dead?
Hmm.
Well, they communicate with the dead. They can actually dig up a dead body and get it to talk to them. Well,
Wow.
what they do is reanimate that body with the spirit. If they can't do this like years later, this has to be done within like the first week or so after somebody dies. Okay, they can. Your spirit is supposed to be still hanging around your body, kind of a thing going on. And what the necromancer does in order to talk to you, he gets you back into your body and reanimates that body so you can talk. He can talk to you. See what I'm saying? I think there was a scene. What's the name of that movie? Jonah Hex. You remember that movie, Jonah Hex?
Mm-mm.
Very famous comic book thing. Anyway, there's a scene where Jonah Hex digs his old buddy up and he brings him back. He touches him and brings him back and he talks to him for a few minutes. That's what necromancers do.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, thanks for that. I like that definition. I like how you expanded on that. And again, Dennis Carroll, wealth of knowledge in all these subjects. So we're going to
Mhm.
revert back to the vampires, and I got to tell you, you've told this to me before. And in fact, you've told the story before. But when you told this before, Dennis, it was a while back, and I've got quite a few more people, a lot of newer people, folks that listen on in the chat room and that are listening at home. And by the way, thanks to everybody in the chat room for coming in. And also for all you people listening that are not in the chat room, you're awesome as well. Thanks for everyone who watches the replays. Without you guys, all the people that the viewership in general, you
Mhm.
guys are awesome. Thanks for pushing the show. Also, Dr. Dennis Carroll, YouTube, Hunting the Shadows. I recommend you subscribe to Dennis Carroll because let me tell you something. After this show, subscribe. During the show, subscribe if somebody drops a link for Dennis because he's got a lot of great stuff on his channel.
Mhm.
He does interviews. He just does his own thing in front of the mic and tells us about all these fascinating rabbit holes and paranormal, if you will. So go check out Dennis because you will love it. You will love it just like I
Mhm.
watch it all the time when I can on replay mostly. So thanks, Dennis.
Yeah.
You had an experience, of course, Christy Sci-Fi from New Orleans is in the house. You had an experience with what you thought to be a vampire in New Orleans, did you not?
Yeah, that happened. That happened in Charleston, South Carolina, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And
My bad. My bad.
it
I
was,
always think New
it
Orleans has the vampires, right?
Well,
yeah.
they do, don't they?
New Orleans? Yeah, I think they
Yeah.
are.
I was in a very old cemetery downtown in Charleston at that time. I can't remember the name of it. And what it
Okay.
was, that day I was looking. I'm a big history buff, okay,
Mhm.
and I was looking for they were one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. That's what I was doing there. And it was like it was a fall day. I remember well. I know the leaves were falling, mostly off the trees, but it's kind of warm. You know how it is in the South.
Mhm.
It can be kind of warm, and even in the fall. I remember that well too. And I was looking around these old stones. Believe me, this is an old cemetery. I mean, it goes back 16th century. And I was looking around and looking for this grave, which I did find. And I'm a big fan of cemeteries. I love to go in cemeteries because they're like an open history book. If you read a lot of the tombstones, they tell you, battles and all this stuff. It's very
Mhm.
interesting to read. So I'm looking around and minding my own business. And I hear somebody said a voice behind me. And she said, and it was a female, and she said, uh, "You like cemeteries?" like that question, you know. I turned around, there was this
Yeah,
girl.
kind of a odd question.
She was like maybe between 18, 19, 20, in the early 20s or something like that. And she was a nice looking girl. She kind of had long brown hair. And well, what struck me is kind of strange when I first saw her. She had a mixture of very old and yet new like clothes on. She had like a shift and a vest, like you know that bodice type thing that
Mhm.
women wear. Had one that was kind of the old, but the dress looked new. She was very pretty, and she was walked up to me, and like I say, it was a very warm day. I didn't pick up on any body heat coming from her. Okay, and the feeling I got, and that's what struck me at first, that there was something very strange about her. There was something that just wasn't right. It was off. I had a very off feeling about it. And she put her hand out and I shook her hand. She said, "Hi, my name is I forget now what she said her name was, but it was like Candace or something like that. My name is that." And I shook her hand. And honest to gosh, it was like shaking hands with a dead person. That's how cold her hand was.
Wow.
And I thought, well, I've touched a lot of dead people over the years, okay, and I know what you feel like when you're dead. There is
Mhm.
not only, and the only way I can explain it is there's not only an absence of warmth, but an absence of life there. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Mhm.
It's just not. You get that feeling of it, and that's exactly what I picked up off of this. And I thought to myself, well, maybe there's something wrong with her. She got some kind of blood circulation thing going on or what, I was just thinking about that. And anyway, she was really nice and I shook hands with her. And she said, she asked me again, "Do you like cemeteries?" I said, "Oh, yeah." I said, "I spend a lot of time in cemeteries. She said, "Well, I do too. I live here." I
Wow.
said, "Oh, really?" Well, I thought she meant she stayed there, all the time. She almost lived there, kind of thing. So I'm
Sure.
giving her the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt a little bit. And so I said, "That's interesting." I said, "You ready to? You like the do rubbings and all that?" I was trying to talk to her about see
Mhm.
where she was coming from here on there. And all the time I'm talking to her, I get this weird feeling. Okay. And I'm not going to say it was very dramatic and I was tingling all over or anything like that, but I mean, I just picking up weird vibes off of this otherworldly type vibe thing going on here. And she said, "No." She said, "I don't waste my time doing that." She said, "I've been here a long time anyway." And I said, "Well, how long have you been here?" She said, "Oh, I'm 200 and some odd years old, I think."
Wow.
That's what she said. And I
Wow.
said, "Really?" I said, "Really?" And she said, "Yeah." She said, "This is a beautiful city to live in, and I died here too," or something like that. And going, this girl is wild. Okay, this girl. Maybe I should start trying to distance myself from this person. And she said, I said, "Why is that?" She said, "Well, I'm a vampire."
Man.
I said, "Well, you know, what do you mean you're in a vampire?" So that's what I thought she was talking about. One of these vampire societies, because every big city's got one. Everywhere in the
Right.
world, they got these things. And she said, "No, no, no, I'm a real vampire. I'm the real thing." And I said, "Well, what are you doing out in the daylight?" You know. So I asked her. She said, "Oh, we can come out in daytime. We just don't like very bright sunlight, but we can come out in daytime." I said, "Well, that's interesting. Okay." So I look down and look at some, tombstones, something like that, and I look up and she is completely gone. And I'm gonna say that it was that fast. It faster than what it took me to tell you that. She wasn't there.
What
And
was
I
her
go,
skin tone like? I
I can
mean,
see through the whole I can see through the whole cemetery. There's nowhere she could duck and get
right.
and hide. I started walking through there looking behind the tombstones. Where did this girl go?
Right.
Just that quick.
Wow. What was her skin tone, like her skin color and stuff? Did she look like odd?
She was pale. She was kind of pale looking, but not real pale looking, you know what I'm saying? But she was kind of, and like I say, she gave me that off feeling, that otherworldly feeling. That's the only way I can describe it. That just wasn't right. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
There was something very wrong with the whole situation.
Sure.
And I talked to somebody about this the other day, and I said, I feel like that one day, I don't know why I say that. I'm not psychic, but I feel like one day she and I will meet again.
Oh,
I
wow.
don't know. It's very strange. But here's the capper for all of it. When I was looking I saw something caught my eye, and I look up, and flying through the trees, the biggest bat I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it was almost eagle's eyes bat. And it was in the daytime now. Bats don't usually come out in the daytime.
Sure.
But it was flying all through the trees. And I'm going, I see that. I said, nobody's going to ever believe the story. But that was weird.
Do you believe that bat was her, that she morphed into that?
I don't know. That could have been a coincidence. I don't know. I can't really say for sure. It makes you wonder.
Right. For sure. Yeah, there's a couple questions regarding the vampires. Ron asked, how long can a vampire live?
Vampires, I think, could live 1,000 years or so, depending on how smart they are and how much they are able to survive. You got to remember one thing about vampires. Although they are immortal, they are also mortal. In other words, they can be destroyed.
Can be.
True immortality, true absolute immortality means you could not be destroyed, no matter what. You know, that would be the immortality of a god. You know, but vampires can't. So they have to be very careful. You know, in order to survive, just like you and I do when we go to Walmart or whatever. We got to keep our eyes open about things around us. Well, they are the same way. Although with time they get smarter, I think. And the older they get, well, it's like, you know, like that saying, respect the old person because they live long enough to be old. They had to know something. To get there. That's the way the vampire is. I would think the older here's the bad thing about it. The older they are, the more experienced they are, the more dangerous they would be.
It would be, right.
That's bad.
So I know Anelia has a really good question.
They call those, by the way, let me say this. They call them the elder vampires.
Wow.
They're the older, they're sort of the boss vampires.
Yeah. I like Anelia's question. She says, does Dennis believe we can tell those people apart from us, or are they that good at disguise? Is there a way to tell that somebody is a vampire just by looking or acting or?
There are certain dead giveaways on it. Like I said, with her, like with that girl, their feeling of them, what you're picking up on. Pay attention to that, because if something's not right, usually that built-in compass you got will tell you, you know, which way it's swinging, something like that. But like I said earlier, the power of the vampire is in its eyes. The glamour it can put forward. It can make you see what it wants you to see. It can fool you. It can twist your reality, change your reality to the way it wants you to see it. So it is sort of like a magical power. It's not only they can mesmerize you, in which they can do that too. They're very much like a snake sometimes does with its prey. They can mesmerize you to get but they can also change your reality to believe what they want you to believe.
Wow. Hey, really quickly too, Tammy I know we have a few more questions in the chat, but Tammy says, do you think that those things happen because you're so close to God that they come to you?
No.
I don't know. Certain people, I think, attract these things. I think people, you know what I said the other night on the show? It's very true. I've had a lot of people come up and say, "How come all these things don't happen to me? I want to see a ghost or I want to see something. How come this never happens to me?" I said, "Well, number one rule," and then Krista knows this well. Number one rule is if you want to find something, you got to go looking for it.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes when we're looking for things, we will find them. Sometimes those things, however, may come looking for us.
Right.
Do you think the more that we research these things and go and look for these things, could be anything, whatever our subject is, do you think we're more apt to have these occurrences or find what we're looking for? And I know in some cases we might regret what we're looking for.
Well, I've had a lot of people over the years come to me, especially young people obsessed with demons. Tell me this about demons, tell me this. And I said, look, when it comes to demons and such things, it's a good idea not to talk about them that much or to dwell that much upon them because you get their attention. They may come to see you. You get their attention, it's not good. Their acknowledgement is not a good thing to get sometimes. That's why as demonologists, you will not hear real demonologists never ever say too much the names of demons. Because when you speak something's name or talk about it, in a way you're calling it forth. You're getting its attention. That's what they talk about with skinwalkers. I've had Native Americans, they don't want to talk about them because they may come to see you if you're not careful.
Yep. You give it powers.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. You're giving it acknowledgement, gives it more power. Definitely. I've told that to people a lot about demons and stuff. And they say, "Oh, I'm going to go home tonight and I'm going to watch for it. I'm going to do this." And I said, "Look, don't do that. You're doing the wrong thing. You need to try to ignore it. Don't give it acknowledgement. Don't give it power. Don't feed the beast."
Mm-hmm. I would agree. Also, I believe and what are your thoughts on this? When people who run EVP sessions and then they take it home and they listen to it on their own computer. I believe you can actually call something in by doing that. What do you think about that?
Well, there's a very fine line, Krista, between communication with the dead.
Sorry,
for whatever intention you're doing.
The internet isn't reachable.
It's your intention behind what you're doing, okay, that counts. So if you're there trying to talk to Uncle Fred and find out what the lottery number is next week and all that, you're not doing this for good intentions. Most of the time when I investigate, I was there to kind of punch it to see what it was, what it was, what it was doing there, what the situation was. I know, put it this way, okay, I don't have to go talk to ghosts because I know they exist.
Yeah.
So I'm saying I'm not looking for that evidence. I had a lot of people come up to me and say this. I know this sounds bad, and I gotta say it. My job as an investigator is not to convince you of anything.
Mm-hmm.
That's not my job. My job is to find out for myself what's going on.
Right.
I can present my evidence to you later if you want to see it. Sure, I'll be happy to show it to you. But that's not my job to try to make you believe something.
Right.
That's your job. That's your job. But my job is that I know. Okay, here's what I always say. Okay, I know this is weird, but this is the way it goes. I will know because I know, and that's the way I want to know. I want to know without a doubt what it is I'm facing. I'm not doing it to put it in a book somewhere. I'm not doing it to impress people. I'm not doing it for that. I'm doing it so that I can acquire the knowledge myself and understand. It's all the thing. I think it's a quest. It should be a quest for understanding.
Yeah.
Hey, really briefly, a lot of people in the chat room have heard a weird voice in the background. I don't know if that was somebody's Alexa going off, but yeah, I heard it too. It was pretty weird.
I heard it too, but nothing here.
Yeah. Always something, Dennis. There's always, Krista and I are known for it. Krista and Brandy are known for it. And even over with text, we pick up Now, whether it's just a computer glitch, I don't know, but we pick up a lot of EVPs during these shows, not all the time. And we record and we go back to the stamps. We listen to them, and we get them once in a while. I wonder if it's because, is it because we're talking about the subject matter, you think, Dennis, and we get these things? I mean, do you experience it on Hunting in the Shadows at all when you do your podcasts?
Yeah, once in a while we get some interference, some weird. I've had that happen in real time. I have actually, during a phone call, had a demon come on the line.
Oh my gosh!
And
Wow.
talk to me.
That's
and
scary.
I was talking to this woman. Well, I was talking to this woman. I was trying to help her out. She was terrified. She had a little baby. She had just moved into this apartment with all this stuff was going on. And I was trying to talk to her. And as I was talking to her, she slowly faded out. And I did to her. I didn't know that at the time, but my voice faded out with her. And this voice came on the line. I cannot describe you what it sounded like because it was not human at all. And it said, "This is my place."
Oh boy!
Wow.
And I spoke back to her. I said, "No, it's not. And I'm coming to take your place away from you."
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And he finally went off the line, and the line come back on. And I asked her, I asked that girl, "Did you hear that?" She said, "No, it was static on the line. You faded out. I thought we was having some, phone trouble or something." I said, "Never mind." I didn't even tell her what I heard because it would have really freaked her out. But it was a bad situation. When I got there, it took a while. I had a problem with that because it was a double apartment, and the people on the other side did not let me do what I need to do on that side. So I did what I could on that woman's side, but she eventually had to move out of that place.
Wow. Wow.
Well, since you just brought this up, I'm going to bring this up right quick. Several months ago, I got an email from this lady. She's a subscriber. I'm not going to put her name out there. And had told me that she thinks that she was being tracked or brought something home, got an attachment of some sort. Because she would have, in some dreams, she would be dreaming the same dream, much like I get once in a while, about this evil presence that was in her home and following her. And let me tell you something. I bring this up because you mentioned the internet and the phone call. She was in the morning. She was driving into work, and her radio.
The most I've had actually were in dreams. They will attack you in your dreams very much because you're very vulnerable in your dreams. I've gotten attacked that way a lot. A lot of people I know have been attacked that way. They get attacked that way on a regular basis because they know you're very vulnerable when you're, sleep. Sleep is very close to death, too, by the way. They know this, and they think they can, make progress that way.
Right. You're vulnerable.
Yeah, you're vulnerable, and we had a little glitch there. I didn't catch part of that, but also as she finishes up the story, she was driving to work, and on her radio was playing, and she said it was on the AM station, which was kind of weird. Most people are on FM.
Yeah.
She said that voice that she was hearing in her dreams all of a sudden broadcast on her radio stream and said it was watching her. As clear as a bell on her radio, AM on her in her vehicle driving to work.
Wow.
Take that for what you will. That would flip me out to hear something communicate to me via the radio.
Wow.
Well, I had a case one time with this lady was attacked in her dreams by a demon. I'm not going to tell you what it did to her in her dream, but during the attack in her dream, the demon put his hand on her back. And when she got up the next morning and went to take a shower, her back started stinging, and she looked in the mirror, and there were fingerprints, bruises on her back.
Scary.
Ooh, yeah.
Dreams can be very real if we're not careful sometimes.
Yes, I do kind of know that. I'm not going to get into my dreams. We'll do it some other time, Dennis. But Krista, do we have a few more questions in there? I don't know if we got them all, or I know.
No, I think there was a couple other questions. Here, Riley, Ron Ivy Forrest asked, I asked it before, are there good witches?
Well, you got to look at witchcraft as this. Okay, witchcraft is not a belief. It's not a belief system. It's a craft. It's a ability to do things. Wicca is their religion, by the way. There are some people with good intentions who practice that. Absolutely. You can't get the witches mixed up with the root doctors or the granny witches, as we used to call them. Those people that sort of had a little touch of magic to them, but they were more like natural remedy kind of stuff, you know. They were the root doctors, granny witches, whatever name you want to give them. The real witches, there are some that are supposedly good. They supposedly do good things. And there are, of course, what the bad ones are the ones that get the most PR on that. Okay, they get the most public relations stuff because they do bad stuff. But I think there are some good ones out there, or people with good intentions,
right,
to do good. Absolutely.
You know, I think that when I hear the word witch, I don't. Of course, I don't necessarily conceive that as bad or evil because I know there are witches out there. They're just that, but they're not. They're good. They're one with Mother Nature, the earth, and they don't have any ill intent or ill will on people. And of course, there's other ones that probably have some nefarious thoughts going on. And really quickly, don't you think that was unfair? I'm going to be doing a story or maybe a show on this late night with the girls. What about?
There are different types, Rob, of magic.
Okay.
There's earth magic, like you talked about. They call that earth magic. It's associated with natural things. Okay. Then you've got, magic itself, the magic of what I call the ether. In other words, the magic that's around us or the magic that people create between themselves and stuff like that. Look at love in its context. It sort of has a magic of its own. So there is that kind of a magic, an interaction type magic. But then you go into other types of magic, like the dark magic that people use. There is a demonic power behind that. See, so it's coming from a different source altogether, and it's not a good source. I always tell people, no matter what it is in the paranormal or the supernatural, I don't care if it's cryptid, whatever the situation is. Go to the origin. Go to the source. Where's the money coming from? Where's the power coming from? Got to go look at that, and that tells you the story.
Yeah.
We could talk about witches ad nauseum. I'm thinking about doing the Salem witch trials with the girls, maybe on a Saturday night at midnight. But let me ask you, even before the Salem witch trials, don't you think a lot of those women back in early Europe or back in England, don't you think they got a bad rap for being executed for being witches? I'll bet that less than half. I bet 90% of them were just human beings. What's your thoughts on that?
Somebody told me the other day I'd have made a good finder general. Okay.
Yeah, I know that.
I don't think I want it. I'm gonna tell you the witch finder general had a lot of power.
Yeah, I remember.
Too much
reading that.
And I think I'm gonna tell you what, in Salem, Massachusetts, not that people go to Salem, come back and say, there's no supernatural stuff at all, Salem. Of course not, because there was no real, I don't think very much a real witchcraft going on in Salem. That was all a land grab and a revenge thing going on. It had nothing to do really with witchcraft. They just used that as an excuse.
Right.
And we've seen it happen. We've seen people use religion as a weapon. And that's what they were doing. That's what the witch finder general did. If you weren't on his good side, he could have you put to death for being a witch, whether you were one or not. It didn't matter. You don't have that kind of power without it going to your head, okay? And that's what happened with a lot of these people. A lot of those judges were that way. But it was a land grab, too. They wanted those people, a lot of those people, they wanted to get their land or get rid of them. It was either one or the other. But it had nothing to do with witchcraft, that much real witchcraft.
I think a lot of people that did not like certain women in their colonies, I think they spread rumors, and these magistrates, these judges, these people of power just assumed they were a witch. And I always got a chuckle out of, not a chuckle, it's terrible. Well, if you're a witch, they would bound them, they would bound their ankles and throw them in a lake. If they survived, they were a witch. Well, you know damn well that 100% of those women all died,
Yeah.
amongst other things.
Well, see, they wielded a power. They wielded a power that said, "Hey, if you're not one of us, if you don't do exactly what we say, if you don't act like us, then there's something wrong with you, and we need to what? Get rid of you. You must be a witch."
Yeah, absolutely.
You take a look at Krista. Okay, she's a paranormal investigator. 200 years ago, they'd have burnt you at the stake for that.
Yes.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yep.
A good friend of mine doesn't come and chat too often. Sunny. Hi, Sunny. I'm glad to see you today. Sunny's awesome. She promotes me on Instagram and all around. Thank you, Sunny. Her question is, Dennis, any dark spirits ever follow you home?
I've had them try to do that, and a lot. That is an occupational hazard for a lot of people, especially paranormal investigators, even cryptid searchers. There is a problem with that. That's why I say when you go into something, or wherever you're going, whether it's house, woods, whatever the situation, you need to go in protected, and you need to come out that way. I have actually stopped many times at the end of an investigation and speak to the spirits. If there's any spirit with me tonight trying to attach to me, unattached from me, you cannot follow me. You must stay here. You have to declare that to them.
Yep.
And tell them to leave you alone so they will not follow you home. But that happens a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, we're getting close to the end, and Grandizer, he's pleading with me to ask you this. See what you know about this, Dr. Dennis. BMR, please ask the good doctor about what his take is on Nuestra Senora de la Santa Muerte, Our Lady of Holy Death, or Our Lady of, Holy Death. Anything, you know what that is?
That is demonic. Yeah, that whole thing is demonic. That is a demonic cult. I hate to say that, but it is. They actually believe, if you believe in this figure of death, that they will make you bulletproof and will give you good luck and all that. This is a demonic cult, absolutely without a doubt, founded by demonic entities, just to lead people astray. And it has its roots very, very deep in the drug culture.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah. I say this all the time, Dennis. 90 minutes flies by. We're having fun.
Yes.
And this has been just a fantastic show. If you guys are coming in late, you got to watch the replay. We talked, a lot of cool Halloween stuff, werewolves, vampires, ended up a little bit of witches, little demonology, and how all these things affect us. And a lot of it's the intentions, right? A lot of these things and a lot of things
Absolutely.
we bring upon ourselves, and don't ever make a pact with the devil, everybody. Just, I don't care how powerful they claim to make you. You're going to pay with your soul for eternity. Does that sum that up, Dennis, pretty much? I think we're losing a little connection with Dennis, but
Yeah.
this was a fantastic show. You can find Dennis Carroll, YouTube, Hunting in the Shadows. And Dennis, outside of that, where else can we find you?
Okay, you can also, my books are on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Just look up Dennis W. Carroll. If you need to contact me for anything, you can reach me at denniswcarroll.com, or you can Gmail me at denniswcarroll@gmail.com. Also, you will find me on Hunting the Shadows YouTube network.
Yes.
And I have 2 shows a week there. All of my shows come on 9:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yeah. And Dennis has a great show. I suggest you check it out. I've been on a couple times, and he's got a lot of great information. Go in his archives and watch some of his shows. They're They are very informative and very entertaining as well. If you're new here, please don't forget to subscribe to Bigfoot Mission Rob, the Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast, Texas Front Porch, and of course, Dr. Dennis at Hunting the Shadows Podcast. On your way out, like. I want to thank also briefly before we leave. I gotta thank. Let me pull it up here. And Annie and Ella Godfrey for your super chat. 2 Shadows for gifting 10 memberships. Ginger being a member for 5 months. And I think there was someone else there, but I missed them. I apologize. You know, I love you just the same. This is a fantastic show, Dennis. And as always, I think you're going to. Are you making an appearance with the Blondes later in the month? Did I see that, Krista?
Yep, on Halloween night.
Oh boy, on Halloween. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That'll be another
We might
fantastic show.
We might come up with some more vampire hunting stuff here.
There you go.
You know, everybody, I love a good werewolf and vampire tale. I know we could have went on for another 2 hours, but people got to go to bed. Chris has got to go to bed. I got to go to the dentist. Talk about Halloween stories. Go to the dentist.
Can I say something real quick?
Yes, Chris. Yes, Krista.
Everybody in the line of In the Path of the Storm, I pray for you all. And I know Ristel, who's been in chat, is like right in the middle of it. So definitely prayers to you and your family and the whole 9 yards. Yep.
Absolutely. Thanks for bringing that up, Krista. For sure. I've been watching a lot of this on YouTube mostly. I don't really watch the news, but YouTube clips. Devastation here in the United States.
Yep. It's awful.
Thanks once again, Dennis, for coming on. Thanks, Krista, for sitting in as always. And thanks to you out in chat. Thanks for people listening later and watching on replay. Thanks for the support, the love, share out, like. And until next time, I'm BMR for Krista and Dennis. Have a great night.
Good night.